Welcome back, Left Reckoners. I'm Matt Leck. With me is David Griscom. Hello, David.
Hey, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing... Oh, well, it's tough. It's a tough day. We'll get into that later, David. Joining us today, Gavin and Cenk of the Vanguard pod, the Vanguard show on YouTube. Gavin and Cenk, which I think both David and I have been on. Is that correct? I know I have.
I haven't.
David, no, but at any point, we'd love to have you.
I'm ready.
There you go. Well, I beat David to the punch there. Of the Vanguard podcast, focusing on left politics and left media. Gavin and Cenk, thanks so much for being with us today, guys.
Oh man, thank you so much for having us. This is really a thrill for me and Gavin. We were big TMBS guys, and so it's just very thrilling to be on a show with you guys.
No, I appreciate it. Well, guys, we were gonna, what you guys cover best is sort of the kind of confluence between left politics and left media, but something big happened that we woke up to today. This is, you can hear it in our voices. It's the morning. This is Friday morning. We all woke up to the news that Diane Feinstein passed away, and I don't know if we have any immediate... Wait, there is some politics to that. Like, Schiff has been, basically keeping her in to try to make sure that he can get Porter in. Is that or Schiff, I think, is this Schiff theory, right? So
yeah, and recently, I believe Gavin Newsom kind of walked back his promise to fill the seat with a black woman. A lot of people thought he would fill the seat with Barbara Lee, and I think he's still technically promising to pick a black woman, but he's saying that it's going to be kind of like a placeholder instead of like the actual new senator from that state. So he really doesn't want to pick anyone that's actually running in the primary, which would take Barbara Lee out of the running. And I have mixed feelings on all of that because on one hand, like, obviously I would like Barbara Lee to be the next senator from California, but there is also an election coming up. So I kind of understand that logic from Gavin Newsom of letting the Californians decide, especially since he picked the last senator as well after Kamala Harris, became vice president. So I just really hope that Katie Porter wins that election and Adam Schiff doesn't win. I imagine Barbara Lee might have to drop out and endorse Porter just because it doesn't look like she's going to win herself. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation.
That's a shame about I haven't been following it that closely, but I'm not a big Katie Porter fan, but go ahead,
Yeah,
Cenk.
same.
Yeah, I think we were originally both pulling for Barbara Lee on the podcast. Obviously she's made she's cast some votes that I disagree with, but I think that, her legend, stands like a cut above the rest. And, so obviously we were interested in that, but it really boiled down to the fact that she wasn't going to be able to compete as much as Adam Schiff and Katie Porter were. And I just think that the line between Katie Porter and Adam Schiff is, it's pretty thick, right? Adam Schiff is one of the more corporate, corrupt Democrats that we have. And to see him get the power in a state like California, it's just going to create another Gavin Newsom type figure, another big liberal guy that could potentially run for president someday that, is going to be a problem for us. As far as the Barbara Lee thing goes, I also agree with Gavin that I don't think that Gavin Newsom's going to go for it. I'm curious to see who you guys think he will, put up as the temporary senator. My instinct now is Karen Bass. She lost the LA mayoral race. She has a history in California politics. She has name recognition in the state, but I don't think she'll come across as anybody who's threatening the results of the Schiff Porter election. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
Wait, didn't Karen Bass win the LA mayoral election?
Oh, yeah, she did win the... Yeah, because what was that guy's name? The fucker, that real estate developer that...
Rick Caruso.
Rick Caruso.
Cenk Uger's favorite.
Yeah, fuck, that's right. Anyway, so that's the only... I don't know. And I'm not that well steeped in California politics, but as far as name recognition goes, if you're, going to pick a black woman from California, Kamala Harris is the vice president right now, probably not going to, step down for that. Barbara Lee, he's already said he didn't for some reason want to appoint.
I've already seen some speculation that he could pick Kamala Harris so then Joe Biden can pick a new vice president.
I love those kind of theories. I don't know.
I don't think that's going to happen, but...
I wouldn't know who
I have
he'd
no
be
idea either.
selecting. Yeah, but look, it's just
I do want to comment on Newsom though, David. Unless you,
go ahead.
Well, Newsom's been driving me nuts because he's making a lot of splashes with the whole DeSantis thing, and people like him, and he's so contradictory because like on the one hand you could if you just wanted to celebrate things from Newsom, you'd be like, oh, look at his inching towards sectoral bargaining in fast food, or like the things that he's doing good, and then on the other hand you wait until a Friday and he's vetoing all these things like allowing autonomous trucks, which is like, you see what autonomous cars are doing. Yeah, let's get some autonomous semis in the mix. Or what else? So asking the Supreme Court, like, can I clear these homeless people out? So it's like, it's weird that he's not running for president, because it's like, why are you in my face with all this stuff all the time? Like, I guess you're just the governor of California. But
I think he also is just desperate to be president.
I hate it though. Like I put a poll up on Twitter yesterday. Like, would you consider Newsom a upgrade, a downgrade, or just even to Joe Biden? And like, a downgrade won barely, and then upgrade and push were even. I'm curious what you guys think. I mean, I trust Joe because like I think Gavin is more of an operator. I think Joe is sort of like running on a bit of autopilot, and you can kind of like guess what, like an algorithm, an AI Joe Biden could give you what Joe Biden's coming. Yeah. Gavin Newsom's unpredictable.
Yeah, Joe Biden's also kind of like at the end of his career, so he doesn't like have to do as much calculation. I feel he can kind of just like do whatever he wants at this point. Whereas Gavin Newsom still does have a lot of like, calculating left. And I agree that makes him a little bit more unpredictable at this point. So yeah, I honestly think it would probably, as far as policy go, either be the same or a downgrade. But I actually think that Gavin Newsom is more, scripted. Maybe that's just me. Maybe the rest of the public would actually prefer him because he's younger. But I actually think that Joe Biden's a more authentic politician that's, comes off as easier to communicate with. And I mean, maybe not so much in his current state, but Gavin Newsom just comes off as such a slimy coastal, scripted Democrat to me, whereas Joe Biden does kind of have his, Scranton Joe shtick.
Gavin Newsom gives off wine cave energy, right? I think that's and the thing about Gavin Newsom is like he would have never had the balls to go stand with the United Auto Workers on a picket line in Michigan. You know what I mean? And we were covering that a lot yesterday because there were some brain dead folks that tried to spin that into a bad thing. I'm like, I mean, it's that kind of stuff. I think that he's going to play his cards right. I think that he would be much more close to like an Obama figure where it's going to be much more like calculated. Like it would be unthinkable to support these union workers. Nobody's ever done that before. But, somebody gets in Joe Biden's ear and they're like, hey, aren't you pro-union? Yeah, all right. I think I am pro-union. Yeah, go hold that sign over there, man. He's like, I'm very proud of these workers. Good job, man. It's like I don't even think he's conscious enough of everything that he's doing to like put up a fight. Like if his handlers are there and they're like, no, you need this bump. Like Cornel West is in the race now. You're polling this, and ABC poll 10 points down in a general election. Man, get out there. Like, okay, where am I going? With Gavin Newsom, I think he's going to have too much of his own strategy. He's going to be on the phone constantly with his, big donors. He's going to, be interested in that advice where I just don't think you can get through to Joe Biden, which is a net benefit.
I just don't like for people who are pushing Newsom as, from the argument that like Joe Biden is weak and Newsom can win. I don't know who Newsom appeals to that is like a pickup for the Democratic Party. That right. Biden doesn't already have on lock, right? That's the thing I've never understood about that kind of argument. And, in California politics in general, it's like when it comes to like the kind of stuff that we all want to see, is a state that obviously has like strong Democratic Party. But if you look at what the experience has been like for working people in that state, it's kind of a counter argument to the idea that to build like a good democratic socialist movement or something like that, we need like Democratic Party superiority for a prolonged period of time, because the rich are extremely powerful in that state. Certainly better than a Republican, don't get me wrong, but Newsom is 1 foot in, 1 foot out when it comes particularly to like the tech industry and like the capitalist class and being able to wage war on working people. But I don't know how many doors it opens up for anybody.
I mean, related to all this buzz about Gavin Newsom, which to me is so based on like Biden's old, and we're embarrassed by it.
Yes.
Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks was on. Was it called The Hill? Is it Breaking Points? Breaking Points. And he said that he's going to challenge Joe Biden because Joe's so bad, and like, I'm not super impressed by that announcement. Like, look, I like to see Joe Biden challenged, but like not just because he's weak electorally. Because like first of all, I don't know about that stuff. Maybe he is, and like things don't look great right now. I admit, but like a lot of shit changes, and I'm not like Nate Silver or like better than Nate Silver, like a smart Nate Silver. And to me, it's like get in the race and hit him because he hasn't done the PRO Act. Or student loan debt or something like that. But I'm curious what your guys' reaction to Cenk saying just to be clear, Cenk wants to run to get 20% and then see somebody else come in. And I don't know who, like Gavin Newsom, like who else is going to come in at that point and be like, okay, yeah, there's a real appetite here because you've somehow got 20%.
I think it's just go ahead, Gavin.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was just going to mention that he did say on Breaking Points, as you mentioned, Matt, that his theory is if he gets in there and is able to get enough support, it'll kind of trigger an actual primary. So other people, Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, whatever other ambitious Democrats out there might see that as an excuse to actually primary Joe Biden, which I actually don't even really think is a very sound theory because of the fact that by that point, we're already going to be so far into the election season that it'll kind of be way too late for someone like Gavin Newsom to actually mount a serious campaign against Joe Biden. So I don't even necessarily agree with Cenk's theory at this point. I really do think Biden would basically have to die for there to actually be a primary. I do think if Cenk ran, that it would amount to little more than what RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson have been able to accomplish, if not less, to be honest, given what Cenk was able to do with his congressional run. Honestly, at the time, like, maybe I was delusional. Maybe I was still a little bit of a TYT fan. I actually thought Cenk had a shot of at least doing decently in that congressional race. And I just remember being so shocked when he came in like 5th place, completely embarrassed himself.
10,000 votes.
Yeah, and that was on the coattails of the Bernie movement when TYT seemed a lot more relevant and seemed to be riding the momentum of Bernie Sanders. Now there is no Bernie Sanders. TYT is less relevant than it was then. I really don't see how this is anything more than book tour publicity stunt from Cenk, who's out here hawking his book. And don't get me wrong, I like the idea of progressives primarying Joe Biden. I've been one of the loudest and proudest Marianne supporters, despite all of everyone's reservations about that. I've been very clear about the fact that I think she's doing a really good thing and a really important thing that none of the establishment progressives had the balls to actually do, which I wish, someone like Bernie or a squad member would have. So I think it's important, but we have to also remember that Cenk Uger's, at least in my opinion, just not a very honest person about his political views. I don't think he really walks the walk. And, he says a lot of things that I agree with as far as his progressive politics. Like if I just turn on your average TYT clip and hear Cenk Uygur talking about Joe Biden's failures and why we need progressivism, I'm likely to agree with a lot of what he's saying. But we have to remember this is a guy who endorsed Rick Caruso, the billionaire real estate developer in Los Angeles. This is a guy who, happily took $1 billion corporate investment to TYT after talking about the corrupting influence of billionaire money over and over and over again on his show. This is a guy that talks about the importance of labor and unions, but tried to bust the TYT union when the employees tried to form one. I mean, in my opinion, Cenk is just not a very serious progressive. And he's certainly, he can be a good spokesperson. I'm not denying that. He's a charismatic guy, and there's a reason why the Young Turks has been as successful as it has been over the years. But I really don't view this as anything more than a publicity stunt. Although, to be fair, it's a publicity stunt that I do want to see happen just for the entertainment value.
Yeah, I think it'll amount to a little more than like an expose and like media figures narcissistic personality disorder. I mean, you have to be completely removed from the real world to think that you, in your niche, after you came in 5th place in California 25, okay, if you are a progressive, like I understand it's not the softest seat for a Democrat in California. I think it because Christy Smith lost that race, right, Gavin, in the primary, or she won the primary but lost the race, or does she have that seat?
I think she did lose that seat in the general to because it's like an Orange
Republican.
County kind of a district.
Yeah. So it not the easiest place to run, but if you're going to run on, I'm able to reach everyone, guys. I'm going to go around here and be a powerhouse. And then you get like 5th or 6th place in a open like jungle primary in California. It's like, maybe you're not the guy to run for president. And what's crazy is that he was like, I really admire what Marianne Williamson's doing. She just hasn't been able to like get the ball rolling. And it's like, and you think that you're the guy that's going to do that? Like she's been going on every show, everywhere that she can go for months and months and months. She actually started running for president at the time when most people announce a primary challenge, right? And so I just think it's very telling that Cenk thinks very highly of himself and that he's not necessarily interested in uplifting the American populace. I think it's a vanity tour, right? If he does go on it, and he's going to do it under the guise of like, I'm not standing for this and all that stuff, and it's like he has every right to run, but I mean, I don't think much of it, and yeah, I don't think it's any surprise that right around the time that he finally releases his book, that he decides maybe I should run for president. It's like, no shit, nobody's ever had that idea before.
Yeah, I'm not standing for this thing. Like, look, like you said, I think Cenk is a very great communicator, very enthusiastic guy. His energy is very valuable, but his politics aren't better than Marianne Williamson's. Like, I'd
argue worse.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, and I mean, like you said, the union busting thing. TYT was unionizing in that campaign, and he blamed that for his loss. And to me, it's just like
straight up like talking points from any Republican. He was like, well, here at TYT, we don't really need you to get in the way of management. I'm happy to talk to anybody. And I'm like,
And yeah, and it's just like, it's one thing to even do this strategy if you had great politics, if you would just copy paste like the person with the best politics, but like to do it as like, okay, Marianne's just not quite good enough. Like, you should be endorsing Marianne maybe, or like saying, TYT's going to help reboot this campaign. It's having troubles, but we have this sort of infrastructure, and we want to see a possible challenger. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty. I rolled my eyes when I saw it. I'll admit.
Matt was the one who told me about it, and I was. I thought he was.
David thought it was going to be for Congress again.
But no, I mean, look, whatever, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and go for it, run. But I really think that like there's an aspect to this is like, I totally agree with you all that like, I don't know about the strategy that this is going to trigger like a legitimate primary. I think that that's sort of a bizarre argument to make, especially if the argument is that like, I need to get to this number, I need people to support me. And then to sort of undermine it, right, by saying like, oh yeah, I'm only doing this to get somebody else in here, right? That makes it a hard thing to support, right? Because you're not even asking people for your vote, right? Yeah, some surprise, right? But at the end of the day, man, it comes into, I think, this really frustrating pathology that comes a lot, for the media, and we're all doing this kind of thing. So, part of it probably comes from us too. But it's just like this idea that politics is like an argument in the sense of like, if you have the guy who can sit in front of the camera and he can say the right things at the right time in the right way, then you're going to unleash like this incredible untapped progressive like movement in society. And it's like, we had somebody who was really fucking good at doing that, Bernie Sanders. And you saw what happened, particularly in 2020, when, I'll say it outright. I think that the lot of the staffing decisions and strategic decisions that were coming out of that campaign were rough, right? And I just can't imagine, and there's an aspect to it that's tough for progressives and democratic socialists and folks like that, is that we don't have a big bench of, campaign staffers who have tremendous amounts of experience. But I'll tell you one thing right now, I have no confidence in Cenk being able to develop a better staffing operation than Bernie Sanders was in 2020, right?
What's crazy is that and let me know what you guys think about that. A little bit of the drama guard entering the chat for a second, because for for about a month, I would say, not months and months, but for about a month, a long month, Nina Turner has been teasing a big announcement on Twitter. She won't say what it was. She's like, I'm up in Vermont and I've got a big announcement. I'm in the studio at TYT and I've got a big announcement. 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 And she just had her show at TYT Sunset. right? So she no longer has her own hourly program there. She was present to lampoon the Republicans during their primary debate. What would you make of the potential outcome where Cenk's recruiting Nina Turner to be his chief of staff, like campaign manager?
I mean,
Yeah,
I wouldn't be.
it's better than
I think that's
Peter
not a
Dow.
bad theory.
And Peter Dow, yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that too, and I have a bit of an interesting theory brewing as well, because the one thing that no one's talking about that is unfortunate and that no one really wants to talk about, but like Cenk's not born in America, so a lot of people would say that he can't run for president because of that. He claims to have like a legal workaround to that on the PBD podcast. I forget exactly what his logic or reasoning was, but he was like, no, if you look at the whatever the amendment is, I forget which one, it's actually, it says that this and blah, 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 if you look at that and do this, and if you read this article, then actually I can run. Which I hope that's true. I think it's ridiculous that immigrants can't run for president in this country, and you have to have been born here when there's so many immigrants in this country, which are so much more enthusiastically patriotic and, excited about America than natural born citizens are or whatever. So that obviously it's a ridiculous rule, but that aside, I am starting to wonder if that is why he's like going to potentially make Nina Turner central to this. Like maybe she would technically be the top of the ticket and he would technically be VP or whatever. That way people could actually vote for her, even though he would kind of be running the show or something like that. I just can't imagine how he's going to get around the not being born here. Do you think that will matter? Because I just feel like every media piece, every article is going to say, this is a fake campaign because he can't even literally qualify.
Well,
Yeah,
Cruz had to deal with that too, right? Because Cruz isn't.
He's
was born in
Canadian.
Canada.
Oh, right.
What
was his plan?
Because he's a white guy.
Well, no, it's because I think that this is actually, here's a silver lining. If Cenk runs a campaign that's based upon just disproving that idea that if somebody who wasn't born in the U.S. could run for president, then that's like a very great issues campaign for me, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's a worthwhile cause. Because I'm no legal expert, but basically the argument is that if you read the actual text. Right, it's a natural born citizen, right? And it's sort of, there's debate about what a natural born citizen actually is, right? Somebody who is, like an official citizen of this country, right? So, there's some gray area there about like the legality of that like requirement, or even if that requirement is in and of itself acceptable. So again, who knows how there's no doubt about it, though. People made an issue about Cruz too, constantly. It was something that was always brought up.
Yeah. It's going to be enough of an issue. Yeah. It's going to be enough of an issue to make him not ever get anywhere near 20%. Right. It's going to be, it's a sort of thing, among other things, that is just death to that aspiration entirely.
Yeah.
Again, it just adds to the delusion.
Yeah.
Right. And again, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead. I'm just saying, it's like, again, like the delusion is here too. It's like Joe Biden is incredibly unpopular. I don't think that that's in doubt, right? And if you look at the polling, a lot of people are like, oh, Joe Biden shouldn't be running. But the fact about Joe Biden is that particularly like Democratic Party voters are like, Joe's not our guy, but he's like the guy. He's the only guy. And the idea is like, yes, people will say that like, hey, I don't think Joe Biden should run. But to really push them to believe in any kind of alternative, we've seen that there's a bit of a ceiling on that. People don't think that it's a possibility. And like, you got to start with a lot of fire. And people actually like believing that like, engaging myself with this is going to open up some doors or change something. And just like the entire premise of this campaign, I think sort of forecloses that, right? Because people say they like all sorts of things and, like Medicare for all and things like that. And Joe Biden won the Democratic Party primary, for example. The politics is about a little bit more than just sort of like we're aligning a map of like people's political positions and feelings about things. You also have to make, it's one of the fundamental difficulties that I think our side has is that people like a lot of things that progressives say, but a lot of people are like, oh, but that's nice, but those things don't happen in this country.
Right. Also, you add to that Cenk is not even someone who is universally beloved within the progressive movement. This guy is incredibly controversial, even within the demographic of people that he kind of claims to speak for. So I don't know how that's going to translate into him being able to be this like great unifier capable of bringing about this like grassroots tsunami that he predicted on his program on Breaking Points the other day. Because he was like, oh, if I do enter the race, it's going to be too late for me to do it in a kind of conventional way. So I'm going to have to hope for the grassroots tsunami, just hope that he announces and wakes up the next morning to, millions of dollars of small dollar donations and everyone just, making his job easy for him, essentially, which I don't think is going to happen. But yeah, that's a great point, David. And I totally agree. Even if people agree with Cenk Uygur's policies more on paper, they're not going to vote for some random podcaster with a million scandals and old blog posts that the media is talking ad nauseum about and stuff. And also I'm sorry, but the whole podcaster running for president thing, we have Larry Elder on the Republican side. He's the radio host. He's kind of in some ways a conservative. Cenk Uygur himself. I mean, he's barely polling at 1%. I kind of struggle to see a niche internet personality like Cenk really breaking through, even though
Give me 10 years, Gavin. I'll drop the roadmap.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a problem with media in general. People have expectations that media can make the difference, but the problem is it's so diffuse. If TYT was really centralized in Michigan, or if it was in Ohio or something like that, then all of a sudden we're talking. But it's everywhere, right? And it's so and so yeah, maybe you can get a bunch of donations from that. But if that actually really starts to kick in, you open yourself to an attack you're funded by all these out of state people and nobody knows who you are here. So and even Charlie Kirk, right? On the right, Charlie Kirk's got this giant media operation. He put all of it behind getting people elected in Arizona, but he needs all those turning points people in Arizona, not Connecticut and everywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's what's misleading about the left media project writ large, right? Is that everybody kind of it's easy, especially I imagine if you have a massive platform like TYT, it's easy to convince yourself that, you're I feel like Jake's almost deified himself. He thinks he's the master at making progressive points and that he can make it to anyone, and he'll look at his numbers and he'll see, I've got 30,000 live viewers right now across my platforms. And it's yeah, dude, but divide that by 50, all across the country. Plus, I imagine there's some international viewers. It's it doesn't have the density, right? You guys probably maybe experienced it more walking around New York City, but how often do you guys really get stopped and be like, hey, are you guys the guys from fucking Majority Report or, Left Reckoning or whatever? It's doesn't happen that
once
often.
A half a year, I'd say, twice a year.
Yeah. And it's that's cool, but it reminds you okay, hey, maybe we're not saving the earth doing this right now. Exactly. Maybe we should actually still put our feet on the ground and touch grass, as the kids say, because it's really good for creating community for people who don't have it. If I'm in, Stillwell, Kansas, and I'm fucking pissed that I don't have anybody that's not a Trump waving or libertarian that hates Trump because of one esoteric thing, but I want to have a community of people who want to discuss and engage, and I don't have the opportunity to go to a local DSA meeting, or I don't have a tenant union that I can, run these ideas by, then it creates a great community for those folks. And that's one of the reasons Gavin and I love to do this job, but it's not people think that it's oh, just get your audience together and go do this. I don't even know if Hassan Piker could get his audience together to do, something political and actually get it off the ground, because it's just so different from, what we do every day.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Also, one more thing I'll say on the issue is just I think people kind of underestimate the fact that, unfortunately, most Americans do want to vote for someone with political experience. Obviously, Donald Trump was a huge exception to that. I think that it is easier on the Republican Party side to get elected as a genuine outsider. And still, with Donald Trump, I don't think it would have been possible if he wasn't, so known as being the personification of entrepreneurial success and capitalism and all that stuff. Most people genuinely thought that Donald Trump was the ultimate in success and all that stuff, and they thought he was a really good businessman, so they're he could actually maybe lead this country, and they were propagandized by seeing him on TV playing the boss on The Apprentice and all that stuff. They don't know about his actual business records, his bankruptcies, his failures, all of that. But I really do think it's most Americans are just so conditioned to vote for people with political experience that it's a lot tougher, especially on the Democratic side, for someone who's a genuine outsider, a podcaster, for example, or even someone like Marianne Williamson, who's worked in, nonprofits and has been a spiritual leader and a, political activist and all this stuff. Even her, a lot of people are like, she doesn't have any political experience. What do you know about running the country? What do you know about politics? And obviously that's, not necessarily true. I think that there's a lot of outsiders and a lot of people without political experience that haven't been, careerist politicians that could do just as good of a job as any, Washington insider. But the media just really conditions people to care about experience. And I do think that especially on the Democratic side, that's always just going to be such a handicap to any sort of an outsider candidate like Cenk Uygur. I really think that Bernie wouldn't have been as successful if he hadn't have had such a long career in politics, and people really felt like they could look at his record and see that he had been on the right side of history and he had voted the right way on every single issue. He had been this gadfly in the Senate and he wasn't just another one of the elites. That's why they trusted him. It's a lot harder to just trust some outsider who's also happens to be a capitalist who's very interested in self-promotion and who's clearly a narcissist like Cenk Uygur. At that point, it's like, all right, is this just a book promotional thing? What is this really about? In a way that you can't really call into question the ideas or something like Bernie Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Bernie being a senator, I think, even if he was a congressman, I don't think he would have got the type of attention that being a senator, I think, allowed him in, like, NBC News, for instance, or something like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little. So, I mean, we haven't really touched on RFK. I mean, one thing I noticed about the when Cenk was talking with Breaking Points about it, is Sagar's like, well, what about RFK? And it's like, bro, no one's doing the RFK thing anymore. Like, not even
people don't want to hear from RFK because he flies too close to the sun. He gets too close to the power. They can't handle the truth.
Yeah, like it was an interesting experiment to show like how fast can you blow the like advantage of having the last name Kennedy in a Democratic primary. Like what does that do for you, and how fast can you squander that? So I don't know if we really need to touch too much on him.
Honestly, if I were Joe Kennedy, I'd be sending flowers to my fucking uncle, because Joe Kennedy used to be the most embarrassing fucking Kennedy in politics, and now nobody ever. Joe Kennedy, who's that? Like, yeah.
Yeah. Cornel West, I'm curious, Cornel West is who David and I probably vote for, I imagine. He's the most Marxist. Like, when I even talk about, like, getting in, it's like, look, unless you're, like a union or, like a Debsian, socialist, like Bernie or something like that, like, progressives are cool. Let's have a lot of progressives, but, like, they're a dime a dozen, let's be real. But Cornel West is not that. I'm curious just what your take on the Cornel West, sort of run has been.
I mean, I'm super excited about it. Personally, I've been a Green Party voter for both of the presidential elections that I was eligible to vote in. And it is definitely refreshing to have a candidate like Cornel West who actually feels like could seriously get the Green Party to 5%. I was a big fan of Jill Stein and happily voted for her, but it was pretty depressing watching the Green Party just kind of nominate Howie Hawkins last time around. There was also the possibility of them nominating Jesse Ventura the last time around. He kind of wanted to run, and they weren't really welcoming him into the party in the way that I thought they should have been, given his name recognition, given his profile. I thought he could have taken the Green Party to 5%, but luckily this time Cornel West has, graced the Green Party with his presence. No offense to the Green Party. It sounds like I'm shitting all over the Green Party. They do good work, but it just frustrates me sometimes with their, lack of an ability to really, recruit serious talent to the top of the ticket. Because if you're going to ask people to vote for a candidate that's, like, let's be honest, not going to win the presidency, I do think it should be a candidate that could at least get to 5%, right? Because it's already a tough sell for a lot of Americans to say, hey, vote for someone who's not going to win. That's a tough sell. Most people are like, if I'm going to walk all the way to the poll or drive all the way to the polls on election day, I'm going to vote for one of the two people that has a realistic chance of winning. And my one big criticism of the Green Party's strategy, up until this point, especially with guys like Howie Hawkins, again, not that it's entirely their fault. They have a primary. That's who the voters decided on, et cetera. But it's like, it's already a tough sell to ask people to vote for a candidate that's not going to win. If that candidate is Howie Hawkins, someone that's uninspiring and doesn't really have a chance of generating a movement or much enthusiasm, then it's kind of a waste of time, even though I still voted for Howie Hawkins. with a guy like Cornel West, who's seriously able to unite a coalition of Americans, not just a bunch of, online lefties, but actually talk to people on the ground and unite left, right, independent, center, everyone around a populist message, a socialist message. I think that's, absolutely unambiguously a good thing, even if he doesn't get to 5%, just because I think he can seriously, bring these policies to the forefront again, like Bernie Sanders was able to, and contrast a socialist vision for this country with the neoliberalism that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party personifies. So I think it's super important what he's doing. I also plan on voting for him. I live in Missouri, so I think Missouri is going to go red. I feel totally comfortable voting for the Green Party. If I lived in Pennsylvania or Georgia, I might vote for Joe Biden, but I'm definitely excited to vote for Cornel West living in the state that I do.
Yeah, I agree with basically everything Gavin said, except for the fact that I actually fucking every time I admit this on air, I get but I voted for Hillary Clinton, and then I voted for Joe Biden, and I just kind of did it through like the grimace. I voted in Chicago 2016, so I was like, fuck, everybody was like, why do you fucking hate black people? And I was like, I don't fucking hate black people. You got to vote for Hillary Clinton, then, and all that brain rot. I was 18. And then the Joe Biden thing, I was like, COVID and everything. I was like, fuck. But this is the first election where I'm like, man, I think I'm just going to go green, and not in small part because I think that Cornel West is actually a visionary. I think that his, record speaks for itself. But to, I guess, contrast a little bit, the one thing I've noticed is that, what Matt was mentioning earlier is that there's not a very deep bench for campaign management in the left for people to help you run your campaign. And like, Gavin and I always joke that if you go on their website, it gives graphic design as my passion, energy. And it's just like, you can tell that, like, I don't think it's a great decision to go and take the guy that Marianne dumped from her campaign and make him your campaign manager. It's like, is there really only one guy? It's just this guy that used to be like the biggest cheerleader for Hillary Clinton on Twitter, and now he's the guy that I no disrespect to Peter Dow. I'm glad that he had his political evolution, but it's just like, we only have one guy. We only have this one guy, Peter Dow. Now this is the only guy that can do it. And it's like, I get that they're thinking that like, he has experience with how the sausage is made and all that kind of stuff. I could see that argument, but I do wish that we had more of a sample size of people. And I wish that somebody like Cenk Uygur, instead of just stroking himself off and decided, maybe I have to be the one that saves this country and puts it on my back. If he was like, wow, actually, we have a very serious public intellectual named Cornel West who is putting up a serious fight. Why don't I go out there and see, how can I help this guy? How can I use my massive progressive platform to fundraise for this guy? Hey, why don't I actually just put a reporter on the ground for once and say, hey, why don't we go do some real reporting instead of sitting behind a desk all day? And I say that as somebody who sits behind a desk. I don't have the fucking money to send a reporter anywhere, right? If I did, I probably would. And like, that was one of the things that TYT used to do. I think instead of him just like finding the next vanity project for himself, if he actually decided to sink his teeth into like the progressive movement, maybe sometime down the road, people would be more supportive of a political run for him. But yeah, I think that Cornel West is the best guy. I wish that, the left had more resources to offer him to, kind of establish himself as a serious candidate, right? Because, if you look at the campaign website on the Green Party, the standard that Bernie Sanders set of just having it all laid out, the complete transparency. This is the policy that I plan to support, and here's everything that you need to know about it. And here's links to peer-reviewed studies showing that, the University of Massachusetts Amherst will save, shows that we'll save this much money with Medicare for all. And like, here's how many jobs we can generate with a Green New Deal. All this stuff, I think it made a huge difference because it made it easy, or it made it so hard for people to brush him off, right? To be like, we can't do that. And he's like, yeah, we can. Look at this, college group of researchers that just prove that we can. And not only that, it'll be cheaper. And you guys are always talking about how much we need to save money and we need to cut the deficit and all this kind of stuff. I think that there's a real need for, that in the Cornel West and Green Party. And I hope that he finds it. And I know that a lot of it's like cash strapped, resource strapped, that kind of a deal. But I think that's the next step in getting, 5%, sure. But like, if you want to have the Green Party be like a real viable contender, we need to get serious campaign people on.
Yeah, and I know, David, you had a stream sort of on a similar topic on third parties yesterday. But to me, it's like I've seen the Green Party since 2000. I mean, speaking of 2000, like Ralph Nader has recently said basically he supports Biden because of things are different now. And people saying he's still not. I think I listened to Nader's radio show back in the day. I haven't listened to it in a while, but like I think he's just, it's his honest opinion. I tend to not agree generally. I think if Cornel West could bring people out, people who aren't going to vote for the Democrats, I think most of them would vote for. Well, I think a lot of them might in the ballot box switch to Joe Biden for the same things that even Cornel West has shown sensitivity to, right? This is why Jimmy Dore was upset with him, that this is an actual problem people deal with. They don't want to enable the right wing. But I think actually, like Cornel West, I think Democrats that think like him even running is a threat to them they're just allergic to democracy, because I think the effect he'd have is get more people interested, allow Joe a little bit more leeway to go on the left, and he'd bring people out that even if he doesn't turn out votes, even if he did cost Joe the election at the top of the ballot, he would bring out more people that are going to vote Democrat beneath it. So the anxiety about it is not, it's all simulated because we don't want to talk about anything other than how people behave on the election day.
I totally agree with that. It's actually a point I've made a couple times, I think, on the show, which is like, he's going to bring out a lot of progressive voters that otherwise wouldn't show up to the polls, like that don't feel inspired enough to go vote for Joe Biden. But if they can go vote for Cornel West, and they're probably going to vote Democrat down ballot, at least most of them. And if there's any like progressive ballot measures on the ballot, then they'll probably vote the right way on those too. So I think it's totally a net benefit if more people show up to the polls, if more people participate in democracy, and especially with whoever the Libertarians nominate, and if there's Joe Manchin with the No Labels Party, like I think there's going to be enough other third party candidates also in the race that whatever amount of the vote that Cornel West takes from Joe Biden, that will be canceled out by whatever percentage of the vote the Libertarian or Joe Manchin takes from the Republican, if you even buy into that whole spoiler logic in the first place. But, that's my kind of theory. That's how I always feel about it. I'm like, no one ever blames the Libertarian Party candidate when the Republican loses an election. But Democrats just can't wait to blame third party candidates and the Green Party whenever their miserable fucking stale neoliberals lose.
And they get less than 2% of the vote, and they're like, it cost Hillary the election. It's like, no, it didn't.
Yeah, and it's like also just in fairness, not even trying to throw too much shade at the Green Party, but it's like usually with like really bad campaigns. So it's like if those bad campaigns are like pulling away votes, it's like, I'm sorry, like there's a problem at the top of the Democratic Party there in their strategy if, these very homespun presidential campaigns are able to pick up any semblance of a vote.
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, I think West would be a great president. I like him. It's sad because I just don't see much juice there, unfortunately, so far. And I think that it's important to be really clear about that with people too, because, the problem with the Green Party and with a lot of these movements is that like they're just sort of hoping that like a base will like construct itself out of nowhere, right? And it's just going to happen on election day, and I don't think that's how that works.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you guys if you think that, I guess you kind of just answered that, David, but I was going to ask you, do you actually think that Cornel West can get to 5% or have some level of success in this? And if you don't currently think he's on track to do that, what do you think he should change about his strategy or like how he's running this campaign?
I mean, I think that with the Green Party, it's like when they really get cooking is post-primary, right? Like once the ticket's sort of set. So there's an aspect to this that you can't judge. But look, I mean, I hate to pour cold water on this whole thing. I really don't even think that there is a strategy or a media strategy that Cornel West could construct right now. Like even if he had the best people around him to break through, because like the fundamental work that has to be done is be like on the ground grassroots work with people. And like the real benefit of this campaign, a lot of this is like, oh, it's a messaging campaign. And I think that that's helpful. To a certain extent, but I think we've done some messaging campaigns and we see where that's gotten us. I think like the real kind of ideological work here is getting people comfortable with the fact with voting for who they want to vote for, right? And that's why like I support West and also Marianne Williamson, which people are making the same kind of arguments against her, that somehow she's a spoiler for running in the Democratic Party primary. And I think that like the progressive movement at large, but specifically the socialist movement, has to get comfortable with the idea that, this isn't the moment where it happens, but like one day I would like, we're going to hopefully be in a world where there are going to be competitive races with maybe a third Labor Party, the Democratic Party, and the Republican Party. And I think people are going to have to be comfortable with voting for that party, even if that means having the Democratic Party lose elections.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And yeah, I mean, I always think it's okay to admit or acknowledge that at this point, without ranked choice voting or some sort of like electoral reform, that voting for a third party candidate, voting Green Party, is essentially a protest vote. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm more than happy to own that. I think the duopoly is worth protesting. I think the rigged Democratic Party primary process is worth protesting. So yeah, I'll absolutely go cast a protest vote. Like I said, maybe if I lived in Georgia, I would think twice, but in Missouri, I'm more than happy to do that. But I am honest about what it is. It's a protest vote. I don't think that Cornel West is going to win the presidency. I am skeptical that he could even get to 5%, as much as I hope that happens.
Yeah, I mean, my general take, then I got to bounce, unfortunately, but is that I think like the Green Party, the idea is similar to the Democratic Party, which is that I don't like it as constituted, and I'm not super impressed by the track record. But if you get people, get the ball moving and at least participate in an election season, because that's when people pay attention to politics, then maybe you can convert that into more of a workers' party that it's not. But Gavin and Zach, the Vanguard, give your socials where people should follow you at.
Yeah, if you want to check us out, we're on YouTube most days at around like 2:30 Central. We go live like within that 30-minute range most days. And on Twitter, we're the Vanguard Pod. Gavin, I'm pretty sure he has his Twitter handle up over there. But yeah, thanks for having us on today, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you guys so much for the invite. Really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to having another one at some point in the near future, hopefully.
Love
Good.
to.
Thank you all.